I think you're amazing.
You are too, Henry.
Thank you so much. Well, Perry, you are awesome.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, and I appreciate you what you're doing too, buddy.
Well, thank you. Because if you allow the world to define you, if you allow friends to define you, if you allow your spouse to define you, or anybody to define you outside of how God sees you, that does open the door to rejection. God bless you. I hope y'all have an amazing day.
Thank you, Brother Henry.
Thank
God bless you
Thank you.
too. Thank you for having us.
If this possibly illiterate peasant is called Lord, and that is so exciting that it really catches on, if that person is Lord, who isn't, who doesn't have nobility, who doesn't have sacred value, if that is the example of what a child of God, if that is the example of what a messianic figure can be, if that is the example of what an anointed person can be, then that is saying we all have sacred value.
Welcome to the Brother Henry and You Show. I am your host, Henry Harris. It's such an honor to be here with you today. Today, our special guest is the one and only Dr. Reverend Durrell Watkins. He's the senior minister of Sunshine Cathedral out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Thank you, Dr. Watkins, for being on the show today. Thank you for your contributions, not only to the church at large, but also the world.
Thanks for having me. It's my joy.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little about your upbringing?
Well, I was born in Arkansas, and my family
What part
was.
of Arkansas?
I was born in Miller County in Texarkana, Arkansas,
Oh, okay.
and I went to college in Arkadelphia, Arkansas. But my family were mixed. My mother's family was Catholic and Baptist. And my dad's family was Baptist and Methodist. And around all of that, I sort of identified with the Catholic part of the family, and then in college became Episcopalian, and then later joined MCC, became a minister in MCC, and so that was the trajectory. Just this big mix of stuff, growing up in the Bible Belt, but also in my own family, having all these different religious expressions, and I just sort of found my own way through and out of that.
Oh, that's awesome. And before we get into the next question, you are an openly gay pastor. What does that mean to you, uh, being openly gay and also a pastor? How do you reconcile the two together? That's what some people would think. How do you reconcile
Yeah.
the two to today, which is in many cases is not even widely accepted.
Yeah. Well, my husband and I have been together for 23 years, and we were married when we were allowed to be, which was 8 years ago. But we've been together for 23 years, and so I'll say we've been married 23 years because we made our commitments then, and we've honored those commitments. So it just took a while for the government to catch up, but we've been married 23 years. And we met in theology school. We're both ministers. I'm the senior minister of this church. He's the executive minister. It's basically a co-pastorate. And so our life as pastors is indistinguishable from our lives as spouses. It's just all the same. And like I said, we met in theology school. We were young in those days, and we've grown old together, which I think is what people want. That's the goal for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It was for me. But I remember, because I grew up in a very conservative environment, and there was always someone to be against. When my dad first started teaching was when schools were first being integrated. And so there was a lot of controversy around that. And there was always, and then when I was young, there was the whole women's lib movement. There was always controversy about that. And then, of course, gay people, as the queer liberation movement, then they became a target. So where I was from, there was always an other that you had to be against. And there was always some Bible verse that, justified it or whatever, gave you marching orders to be against those people. And so I grew up, hearing that my deepest thoughts and truest feelings were bad. then you're afraid to tell anybody. So now you have a secret, which weighs you down. And of course, we're as sick as our secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And I just prayed and prayed and prayed forever. I would go to Pentecostal prayer service, healing services. I would go to Catholic confession, just whatever, trying to get rid of this thing that everyone told me was bad. Although it's how I got here. It's just who
Yeah.
I was from always.
Yeah.
And so I would just say, God, you have permission to strike me straight right now. Just if it's that important to you, do it right now. And she never did. And so I just finally in prayer one day, and I don't mean this to sound overly mystical, because I know that psychologically things work all kinds of ways. But honestly, in prayer, I did hear within myself the words, "Not even God can heal what is not sick." And that just sort of settled it for me. Now, after that, years of study, it's like, oh wow, that little voice in my head was right. But it was, and I found out this must have been in the mid '80s. And so imagine my surprise when I found out that the American Psychiatric Association had taken homosexuality off its list of disorders in 1972. This was old news. I don't know how come I had to get it in some sort of weird mystical experience, and then only later in college find out about it, in classes and libraries, because that information had been out since I was a kid. I was born in '66. Since I'm 6 years oold, this news is out there, but it had not reached me. So, but and so that's what a lot of what I do now is I want people to hear the good news that as we say at Sunshine Cathedral, you are God's miracle, not God's mistake.
Oh, I think that's amazing. I think it's wonderful that we live in a time where, we can authentically be ourselves. And I think overall, that's what God wants us to be, just be true to who we are. So you are the senior minister of Sunshine Cathedral. Um, when was that established? And can you tell us a little bit about your church as far as like the vision and what y'all trying to carry out to the public?
Sure. Sunshine Cathedral started as a Church of the Holy Spirit, and changed its name, I think, in the late '90s. It was started in 1971. And in the early days, they would have like a pastor a year because they were just getting started. And but they've had 3 long-term pastors, and I'm the third one. The first one was here for about 8 years. The second one was here for 22 years, and I've been here 17 and counting. So we've had 3 long-term pastors, and I'm proud to be in that lineage. Um, this is our third building. The first building was in an area called Sailboat Bend, and then the second one was in this neighborhood, just a few streets over from here. And now this had been a Baptist church, built as a Baptist church, and then they sold it to a Pentecostal church, and the Pentecostal church sold it to us, which was a little unheard of. I mean, because they knew who we were, but it was a pastor-led church where whatever the pastor wanted, the pastor got, and he wanted us to have it. He just liked us, and we had cash in hand, and so whatever. So this church, this building has always been a church, and we moved into it in 2001. But our congregation has been around since 1971, has been in this building since 2001, and so we're a young church in the history of churches, but in the community we're well established, over 50 years old.
Oh, that's good. And I noticed it says my queer church. Can you elaborate on what that means to those that may be watching?
It's just an easy hashtag. It's just a way of getting, you'll remember it, either because you love it or because you think it's scandalous. But either way,
Yeah.
you'll remember it. And we do identify as a queer church. Now, every person does not have to identify that way, but and you've seen some of our services, so we embrace what is academically called queer theology, and our reading of scripture is we use a queer hermeneutics. And yes, that is inclusive of LGBTQ plus people, but it's even more than that. We've borrowed or been inspired by feminist theology and Black theology and Mujerista theology and womanist theology. These contextual theologies that read from the margins, they reach out to the margins and they read from the margins. And so it's about including people who've been left out, uncovering the voices that haven't been heard. And so we intentionally, authentically, because readers make meaning. We can only read as the people we are. And so we read the text, we do theology. That's our experience of being in the margins, left out, put down, dehumanized, demoralized, demonized. And so we bring that experience and that voice into the conversation. So so when we say we're a queer church, we mean that we embrace queer theology and queer hermeneutics. Of course, we have a lot of straight people. We have all kinds of people, but they are people who've chosen to come to a church whose outlook is queer. And another way of understanding queer is just to be different. And another way to look at queer is to sort of spoil things, like to be disruptive. And so we want to disrupt the status quo. We want to disrupt homophobia. We want to disrupt misogyny. We want to disrupt transphobia. So by any of those definitions, we are queer. And we also have some people who identify as queer. But it's really about the theology, the hermeneutics, and the outlook. And so that's what my queer church is.
Oh, I think that's powerful. I was reading the bio, and I'll be honest. I'm speechless because I don't see this much in many churches' bio where the whole bio was beautiful about Sunshine Cathedral. But what really like touched my heart was the little old statement that says we subscribe to a variety of beliefs. That is very uncommon in most churches these days. In
Mm-hmm.
most churches, you got to believe the way we do or
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. But for everybody to have something to bring to the table just really expresses and embodies what not only who you are as a senior minister, but what Sunshine Cathedral is. And what does that mean to you as we go to a close to be part of a community where you're leading, where everybody has something to offer and something to bring to the table, spiritually speaking?
We have atheists. We have Muslims. One of our Muslim members, he's a baptized Muslim. He got baptized a few Easters ago, and he said, "I want to be baptized. I want to be fully part of this community, but I don't want to give up my Muslim identity." And I said, "Okay." And so he's our baptized Muslim member. Brought a row full of his Hindu friends on Christmas Eve, and they just had a marvelous time. But yeah, we're not going to tell you what to believe because my beliefs have changed over years, and I hope they still do. I mean, I hope I'm always growing and evolving, and so we just allow that for everyone. And even when people say they're atheists, when they tell me what the God they don't believe in, I usually say, "Well, I don't believe in that God either."
Yeah.
If that's the only God on the table, let's all dismiss that God. But yeah, just people bring their authentic selves, and then once they have a safe place to be, well, they're going to grow naturally in some direction. They're going to ask their questions. They're going to follow their leads. At our communion table, we have open communion. We say every Sunday that regardless of what your beliefs are, what your beliefs or doubts are, you are welcome at this table. And so just that we just try to love people for who they are, and once they're accepted, they'll find out who they are, and they'll be fully integrated. They'll be fully whole. They'll be fully true to themselves. And the biblical word for that is salvation.
I appreciate who you are, and I appreciate what you're doing there in Fort Lauderdale, Florida at Sunshine Cathedral. And I want to encourage you to keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you as well. For more information about Dr. Durrell Watkins, or Sunshine Cathedral, you can visit www.sunshinecathedral.org. You can see their service times. Do y'all go live on that website, or is it just Facebook?
We are on 6 different venues: Roku, Amazon Fire, Google TV, Facebook, YouTube, and Apple TV. And so our 10:30 service is live streamed on those 6 venues.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
And thank everyone for watching. We'll see you next week. Well, Perry, you are awesome.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, and I appreciate what you're doing too, buddy.
Well, thank you. Because if you allow the world to define you, if you allow friends to define you, if you allow your spouse to define you, or anybody to define you outside of how God sees you, that does open the door to rejection. God bless you.
I
And I hope y'all have an amazing day.
Thank you, Brother Henry.
Thank
Thank
God
you.
bless you too. Thank you for having us.